Raina rushed towards them, asking them to wait. As laughter filled the air, Raina inquired about the amusement. Raymond turned to her, delivering the somber news that she would no longer be attending her private school as he couldn't afford it anymore. Struggling to find her words, Raina questioned her stepfather Raymond. My evil stepfather and his 5 daughters, Family Secrets. Once upon a time in the small community of Sunny Grove in western Jamaica, young Raina resided with her mother Cindy, stepfather, and 5 stepsisters. Cindy had remarried 2 years after the passing of Raina's father when she was just 5 years old. In their harmonious household, Raina enjoyed a perfect bond with her 5 bonus sisters, and Cindy, her mother, couldn't have been happier. However, as the years unfolded, Cindy's husband, Raymond, started introducing her to some questionable investors. Despite her years of success in the buying and selling business inherited from her first husband, Cindy declined to work with these shady individuals, determined to uphold the integrity of the thriving business her late husband had built. Raymond persistently urged Cindy to trust him and invest her life savings in his dubious oil business. Despite his insistence, Cindy continued to decline. Then, one fateful day, she went to work and never returned home, leaving behind a puzzled family and a cloud of uncertainty. Days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of Cindy. Raymond, growing desperate, involved the authorities in the search, but they couldn't locate her. She seemed to have vanished without a trace. As the search extended into months, Raymond reluctantly shifted his focus to his new business venture, leaving Cindy's mysterious disappearance in the background. The household dynamics shifted for the worse as Raina, now 13 years old, found herself thrust into the role of a maid by her mean stepsisters. Overwhelmed with household chores, she faced physical abuse whenever she resisted, outnumbered and mistreated in the home her mother once made happy. A year after Cindy's mysterious disappearance, Raina's once loving home had transformed into a nightmare. Early one morning, her 5 stepsisters barged into her room, demanding breakfast. Raina, still grappling with the absence of her mother, chuckled at their audacity. In response, Alyssa, the eldest, forcibly pulled her up, ordering her to the kitchen. Tears welled in Raina's eyes as she contemplated her new reality. The mistreatment escalated, and fueled by jealousy, the sisters devised a cruel plan to cut Raina's beautiful hair. That night, as Raina slept, she awoke to the touch of hands in her hair, her stepsisters with scissors in hand. They restrained her, reveling in her distress as they ruthlessly cut her hair. The echoes of their laughter haunted the hallway as Raina grappled with the aftermath of their heartless act. When she sought refuge by reporting the incident to Raymond, their father, he callously chased her away, indifferent to her pain. The mistreatment of Raina persisted, and her attempts to report her stepsisters to her stepdad, Raymond, were met with dismissal. Alone in her once loving home, Raina realized that her cries for help fell on deaf ears, and the comfort of her mother was a distant memory. Determined to endure, she avoided her troublesome stepsisters and silently carried out her chores, trying to navigate the challenges of her transformed household. In the midst of her oppressive household, Raina found herself burdened with all the domestic responsibilities. From cooking and cleaning to laundry and errands, she tirelessly served Raymond and his 5 daughters. Despite her dedication, they denied her even a basic necessity, food. To add to her misery, they would wake her at odd hours of the night, demanding water or anything they desired from the kitchen. Faced with this unbearable reality, Raina decided to take control of her fate. Refusing to starve while waiting for her mother's return, she clandestinely started taking on minimal jobs for couples and community members. Raina became a tutor for younger children, and in return, their grateful parents provided her with food or a small amount of money. Living in constant fear that Raymond and his daughters might discover her secret earnings, Raina carefully navigated this hidden source of sustenance to maintain her well-being amidst the challenging circumstances. 3 years passed, and Cindy remained missing. Raymond's business struggled, and his notorious temper surfaced with each setback. Desperate to turn the tide, he continued dipping into Cindy's savings for reinvestments, but none of his endeavors yielded positive results. The once stable household now faced the storm of financial turmoil and an absent mother, casting a shadow over the lives of everyone involved. Amidst escalating financial troubles, the mounting debts left Raymond grappling with the harsh reality that he had not only lost his own money but also the savings belonging to his missing wife, Cindy. Faced with the dire situation, he reluctantly acknowledged the need for a change and was confronted with the decision to seek employment in order to provide for his 5 daughters and his stepdaughter, Raina. On a Monday morning, the 5 sisters waved goodbye to their father Raymond, ready for school. Raina rushed towards them, asking them to wait. As laughter filled the air, Raina inquired about the amusement. Raymond turned to her, delivering the somber news that she would no longer be attending her private school as he couldn't afford it anymore. Struggling to find her words, Raina questioned her stepfather Raymond about why she was being denied an education while her stepsisters continued attending school. Before he could respond, Raymond, overwhelmed by frustration, slapped her and coldly ordered her to go to the backyard to do the laundry. As tears streamed down Raina's face, she couldn't help but recall her late father, her missing mother, and the memories of a once perfect family that now seemed like a distant dream. Weeks passed, and the 5 mean stepsisters continued their torment of Raina, adding more chores to her list while taunting her relentlessly. Their cruelty persisted unchecked, as their father, Raymond, turned a blind eye to the suffering of the now presumed orphaned Raina. The once loving household had transformed into a place of relentless hardship and heartache for the young girl. One day, Raymond stormed into the kitchen where Raina was preparing dinner. Violently knocking over the food, he ordered her to pack her bags and leave. Struggling to find her voice, Raina was forcibly pushed out into the pouring rain by her stepfather, who callously commanded her to leave his home. Begging for a reprieve, Raina pleaded with Raymond to let her stay the night, promising to leave early in the morning. Reluctantly, he agreed, but under the condition that she would go work as a domestic staff for a wealthy family in the next community. One of Raymond's former business partners had married a new wife and required a maid, with Raymond offering Raina for the position, hoping to use her income to support himself and his 5 daughters. With no other options, Raina, left with no choice, agreed to work for the wealthy family. As morning arrived, Raina's bags were packed, and she was ready to embark on her new job. Raymond provided her with instructions on what to do when she reached her employer's home, and she nodded in understanding before parting ways, leaving behind the turbulent household that had once been her home. Raina traveled for a while until she arrived at a beautiful mansion. Gazing around in awe, she approached the front door. Before she could even knock, a woman opened it and greeted her. Overwhelmed, Raina couldn't find her voice, and her heart sank as she fell to the ground in a moment of unexpected emotion. The woman called for her husband, who rushed to the door to find Raina passed out on the floor. They quickly brought her inside, offering water as she slowly regained consciousness. As her eyes locked with the woman she first met, she heard a gentle inquiry, "My dear, are you okay?" Raina, offering a smile, responded, "Yes. But..." When asked about the issue, she brushed it off, saying she was just tired from walking in the hot sun. The couple introduced themselves as Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Concerned for Raina's well-being, they suggested she rest for a while before they showed her around, outlined her duties, and discussed her salary. Grateful, Raina nodded and thanked the couple for their kindness. As Mrs. Smith showed Raina around the house, she suddenly burst into tears. Concerned, Mrs. Smith inquired about the issue. Unable to contain her emotions, Raina drew closer, hugged Mrs. Smith, and called her mother. Surprised, Mrs. Smith questioned Raina's statement. She explained that her mother disappeared years ago, and when she saw Mrs. Smith, she felt an undeniable connection. Baffled, Mrs. Smith clarified that they didn't have any children. Mrs. Smith had been living abroad for many years and had recently returned. Alarmed, Mrs. Smith called for her husband, worried that they might have hired an unstable housemaid. As he rushed to her side, Mrs. Smith explained Raina's claim. Confused, Mr. Smith couldn't fully grasp the situation and decided they couldn't hire Raina, fearing potential trouble. Raina pleaded for them to hear her out and asked if she could retrieve something from her bag. Producing a picture of herself and her mother Cindy, the Smiths' jaws dropped in astonishment. Mrs. Smith, whose maiden name was Carol Jones, had been raised by adopted parents in Canada and had no children. She returned to her home country only 3 years ago. Staring at the photo Raina presented, Carol saw herself and couldn't comprehend what was happening. Her husband, equally shocked, recognized the face of his wife. In an attempt to seek clarity, Mr. Smith suggested that Carol call her parents. Nodding in agreement, Carol pondered, "Could it be that I have a twin sister or an identical stranger?" The mystery unfolded, leaving them both perplexed and eager to uncover the truth. Carol phoned her parents, and after a series of questions related to the current situation, they revealed that she was born a twin, as they were informed by the orphanage from which they adopted her. They had tried to locate the other twin in the past, hoping to adopt her as well, not wanting the sisters to be separated. However, the biological mother had only given up one of her daughters, and no one could locate the other twin. Tears filled the room as Carol grappled with the realization that she wasn't alone in this world and, to her surprise, she had an identical twin sister. The possibility of having a niece also crossed her mind, adding layers of emotion to the unexpected reunion. Carol embraced Raina tightly, eager to learn more about her long-lost twin sister, Cindy. Raina poured out the details of her mother's disappearance, sharing the pain and uncertainty that had lingered for years. Touched by Raina's story, Carol promised to do everything in her power to unravel the truth behind Cindy's disappearance. Suggesting a DNA test to confirm their relationship, Carol and Raina eagerly agreed. The next morning, they headed to the hospital to submit their samples. After 2 weeks, the results arrived, confirming the biological connection between Raina and Carol. Overjoyed, tears welled up in their eyes as they embraced the newfound bond. Carol's husband stood by as a supportive presence, witnessing the emotional reunion of two long-lost relatives. As the aunt and niece bond deepened, Raina's life was transformed from that of a household maid to one akin to a princess. Carol, supported by her husband, Mr. Smith, decided to play along with Raymond's deceptive game. Leaving Raina and his wife Carol at their house, Mr. Smith ventured to inquire about Raina's background. Armed with Raina's potential salary, the facade of a routine inquiry was maintained to avoid raising Raymond's suspicion. In the midst of questioning, Raymond's 5 daughters spoke highly of Raina, hoping to extract any information about the whereabouts of Raina's mother Cindy. To his astonishment, Raymond feigned ignorance, denying any knowledge of Cindy's location, pretending to be sad at the disappearances of his wife. Unconvinced, Mr. Smith decided to take matters into his own hands and hired a private investigator to delve deeper into his wife's family's past, aiming to uncover the truth behind Cindy's disappearance. As he maintained surveillance on Raymond and his 5 daughters, they remained vigilant for any clues that could lead them to Cindy's hidden whereabouts. While Mr. Smith skillfully navigated the delicate task of gathering information from Raymond without alerting suspicion, Carol and Raina continued to foster their newfound bond, patiently awaiting the results of the private investigator's efforts. Every week, Mr. Smith diligently delivered Raina's salary to Raymond, taking the opportunity to engage in casual chit-chat, reminiscent of their old business partnership. Surprisingly, during these interactions, Raymond never expressed any interest in seeing Raina or inquiring about her well-being. This lack of curiosity didn't trouble Mr. Smith. In fact, it brought him satisfaction because he knew that if Raymond saw Raina, he would quickly realize she wasn't fulfilling the role of a maid but was, in fact, living a life akin to that of a princess. This routine continued for almost a year, with Mr. Smith faithfully delivering the envelopes without any questions from Raymond. The apparent lack of concern from Raymond served as a small victory for Mr. Smith, assuring him that Raina was living comfortably and was, to some extent, shielded from the hardships she endured in the past. Despite the prolonged wait for any breakthrough in the investigation, a glimmer of hope emerged as the private investigators reported some promising new information, reigniting the pursuit of the truth surrounding Cindy's disappearance. If you like part 1 of this story, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for supporting this channel. Your support means a lot. Stay tuned for part 2.